value. Our mission is to deliver excellent customer service through a motivated, skilled, and empowered workforce by ensuring treatment and delivery of high-quality drinking water, as well as holding collection and reclamation of wastewater to a high standard while implementing innovative solutions for resource recovery. In 2019, I'm sorry?
Is that the clicker right there?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so I'm still on slide 2. So in 2019, DWM initiated our strategic plan 2022, or One Water Vision, which sets out our plan for 2019 through 2022. The plan defines the core services of the department and 8 strategic priorities that will lead to operational efficiencies and improve customer service. Most importantly, it establishes our core values as one team, as well as fosters our goal to continue to become a best-in-class utility. And the 8 strategic priorities are service delivery, infrastructure reliability, workforce development, operational efficiency, financial resiliency, compliance, smart utility, and safety and security. These priorities represent the areas that we believe are essential for a leading water and wastewater utility. We strive to meet the needs of our customers by ensuring access to safe, clean drinking water, while investing in our infrastructure to improve our resilience, make operations more efficient, and facilitate the continued growth and economic prosperity of the City of Atlanta and the region that we serve. Advancing to slide 3, this slide is a high-level departmental overview of DWM's core services. DWM is one of 100 largest utilities in the U.S., defined by our 3 core services that includes drinking water, water reclamation, and watershed protection. We're supported by a dedicated workforce of over 1,400 employees, serving 1.2 million customers per day, with a strong credit rating, a robust $1.3 billion 5-year CIP. Fiscal year 22 operating budget is $621 million. So sound financial planning, management, and performance are essential to the department's success. DWM is also currently midway into a $4 billion Clean Water Atlanta program to address 2 federally mandated consent decrees, with compliance requirements and to complete necessary improvements to the city's sewer infrastructure. We continue to maintain compliance and foster a positive working relationship with regulatory agencies and environmental stakeholders. Advancing to slide 4. This illustrates the department's current organizational structure. The department is comprised of 7 offices that support our overall operations. And advancing to the next slide, at this time I'll yield to my colleague, Director Jennifer Hicks, to cover the department's approach for personnel actions and headcount.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner. On slide 5, the first table is a breakdown of the employee headcount in each of these divisions. For FY23, the department is requesting a headcount of 1,619 full-time employees, slightly lower than the previous year, zero funding 168 of those positions. For FY22, the budgeted headcount was a total of 1,619 active FTEs, zero funding 138 of those positions. This will allow the department to fund and backfill in the coming year 141 positions. For the next slide, Commissioner. For the headcount utilization for FY23, DWM is abolishing 41 active positions, 173 extra help positions to clean up the position report. We are creating and reclassing 20 positions for OCCBS, that is our Customer Contact Center. DWM for the FY22 hired 109 employees and offboarded 226 employees. The Office of Water Treatment and Reclamation will provide salary adjustments to our mission-critical licensed operator ones, supervisors, and plant maintenance mechanics seniors. DWM leadership is continuing to align the organizational structure to improve the department's efficiency. And lastly, we are repurposing positions to use where vacancies are needed. And I'll yield back to Commissioner Browning.
Thank you, Director Hicks. So advancing to slide 7, it says DWM's metrics. Our key metrics are based on industry standards. This details our fiscal year 21 actuals, fiscal year 22 targets as well as our fiscal year 23 targets. We're continuing to gather and closely review fiscal year 22 actuals and the results in order to institute any necessary changes that will aid us in working towards meeting the target goals and improve performance. Each year we strive to continue to improve in each key area. A few key areas that will continue to be a focus include efforts to minimize the number of estimated bills. We've completed an analysis of accounts and have pinpointed issues relating to aging meter infrastructure, and will be prioritizing those assets for replacement over the coming months to ensure that the assets are functioning properly. Sewer spills per 100 miles, we continue to make strides in the right direction of reduction, and it's due to us ramping up system improvements, preventive maintenance efforts to clean and inspect targeted areas of the system where recurring spills appear to be prone to debris and or recurring issues. And we will continue to reduce the number of rain-induced spills as a result of the continuance of infrastructure improvements associated with the Clean Water Atlanta Consent Decree program. Similarly, we will also continue to build on improvements in the areas of compliance, sustainability, and operational efficiency as a result of critical repairs and the implementation of energy savings measures at our water treatment and reclamation facilities that we are optimistic will translate into a decrease in operational and maintenance costs. Advancing to slide 8, fiscal year 23 plan of operation. Our focus mode of operation will consist of the close alignment of the department's key performance indicators and ensure that we meet our target operational goals. Top priority for the department is to maintain compliance with all regulatory requirements and permits. Second to compliance is a strong focus on service delivery. Timely response and excellent customer service are a top priority for the department. And by meeting established SLAs, it enables us to fully recover costs for treatment and delivery. From a workforce development standpoint, and for the upcoming fiscal year, we will continue to fund and recruit mission-critical positions, primarily within our operational divisions. Like many other utilities, the department is experiencing an aging workforce, limited qualified candidates, and impacts from new technology. As a result, our workforce development goals are to ensure we hire and retain highly skilled workers, establish a pipeline of candidates through partnerships with local colleges and the Atlanta Public Schools, and leverage the skills of current employees to meet DWM's business demands and customer expectations. We'd like to ensure that we continue to evaluate salaries and benchmark other agencies and market conditions to ensure that we continue to offer competitive and attractive salaries needed to retain and attract talent. And we'll also be focusing our efforts to closely review thoughtfully measures to address overtime usage and continue to work towards reduction, set appropriate budget levels and staffing alignments, carefully align capital investments for the renewal and replacement of aging assets to ensure operational efficiency. And at this time, I will yield to Deputy Commissioner Jonathan Williams to cover the next few slides concerning the department's fiscal year 23 budget.
Thank you, Commissioner. Because this is my first year in this role and there are new members on council, I will provide a brief overview of the structure of our financials. For clarity, watershed budget is spread between two funds, 5051 and 5052. 5051's wastewater and water revenue fund derives revenue from the water sewer services, plant operating charges, municipal option sales tax, known as MOST, and other operating revenues. It also supports the ongoing service delivery, operations, and maintenance, O&M, as well as other watershed overhead expenses. 5052, Water and Wastewater Renewal and Extension Fund, derives revenue from the interest earnings, tap and meter sales, a portion of the MOST, and equity transfer. This fund provides support for the department's capital improvement plan. We use the acronym CIP when discussing the operations and accounting for this area. Since the initial information was provided to populate your budget books, we have incorporated a few updates that more accurately reflect our overall strategy. The largest change is driven from reducing our headcount numbers from the initial fully funded members to the current mission-critical hires that are provided in the beginning of the presentation. I will point out the impact of this reduction when we get to the section of the slides. For purposes of this presentation, we will focus mainly on the 5051 accounts that are in your budget book for a detailed review, but will also reflect 501 and 502 accounts in our high-level analysis. A detailed review of 5052 capital plan has been completed and is included in the appendix. Slide 9. In recognition of our fluctuating economy, market instability, and inflationary impacts, Watershed has taken a scalable approach to building this year's budget. To that end, DWM intends to remain flat in our operations and maintenance budget between the 2022 adopted and our 2023 budgets. Watershed will accomplish this by funding and hiring to a critical mass of mission-critical employees, abolishing aged and zero-funded non-critical vacant positions, and realigning expense budgets to areas of market volatility. Slide 10, please. Watershed continues to focus on hiring critical staff that will allow us to meet or exceed our service level agreements while managing our overtime expenses downward. We have incorporated this downward trend into our budget. 11, please. The O&M revenue budget summary by office for Fund 501 and 5051 and 5052 reflects a small adjustment between the accounts that accurately depicts the appropriate alignment of revenue and expense. The net impact on our total budget is 0. Slide 12. The budget summary by office reflects the increased costs of consent decree emergency leases that are budgeted in the Office of the Commissioner, increases in water and reclamation costs related to increases in fuel and chemical costs, increases in financial administration include the impact of increased online customer payments that began during COVID and the associated transaction fees associated with them. The remaining offices are relatively flat or reduced. Capital outlays for the expenditures that exceed $5,000 are for technology upgrades and other watershed location improvements. Slide 13. Personnel services reflect strategy of only filling mission-critical positions as well as reductions to extra help positions and overtime. Increases to other expense line items reflect our expectation of continued inflation in contracted services, supplies, transaction fees, fuel, and chemicals. Next slide, please. On slide 14, there's an error in the first statement. Water and sewer anticipations actually show a modest increase of $1.3 million from 2022 to 2023 and are reflected in our 2022 run rate. Most, again, municipal sales tax revenue for FY23 continues to exceed expectations, but could be significantly impacted by market conditions, thus the relatively conservative view for 2023. Most legislation was last reimposed in 2020 for a term of 4 years and is capped at $750 million. There are 3 more 4-year terms that are contemplated in the legislation, with a vote required every term in order to continue. While the growth of most income has been encouraging during a period of flat growth in water and sewer anticipations and negative growth in interest income, there is a concern that inflationary impacts to fuel, chemicals, contracted labor, and supplies may outpace revenues. Slide 15, please. With the anticipation of additional most income in 2023, we will be increasing our reserves to the required levels to maximize our credit ratings and adhere to our bond requirements. This increase is the only material difference in the year-over-year budgets. With that, I yield to any questions or comments that you may have.
We'll save them till the end. Or
Oh, okay.
you want to entertain questions now?
Thank you, Commissioner Bowning, your team. A few questions.
And I have a couple more slides. But I
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Go. Finish your.
Finish it off?
Sorry.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. So advancing to slide 16. This lists our key deliverables and benefits, and a few notable include continued compliance with the consent decrees, continue to foster implementation of the Integrated Biosolids and Zero Waste Initiative and work towards a sustainable solution for biosolids disposal, and reduce the need for landfill disposal, continued full compliance with Safe Drinking Water Act, as well as pursue available state and federal funding to advance critical CIP projects. Advancing to the next two slides, 17 and 18, this lists various awards that the department has achieved over the past fiscal year. They reflect our continued commitment to innovation and steadfast efforts to being a leading water utility. And in conclusion, we've included in the appendix a few more slides as additional information regarding Fund Account 5052. Subject to your questions, this concludes our presentation. We sincerely thank you for your time and attention this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Shook. Thank you, Commissioner Browning, your team. Met with some affordable housing developers a week or so ago, and issues that I'm sure you're aware of, and I believe we've spoken about before. And that the issues were shared across the city. It was not just watershed focused, but some of the issues, affordable housing developers, not unlike market rate housing developers or those that build a combination. But these small scale affordable housing developers took issue with two things. Number one was in the permitting process, one of the problems was site development, doing not just one, not just two, sometimes 3, 4, 5 reviews, which terribly delays their permits for many months. Causes more work for them, it causes more work for your team. I know some of the initial review is, we want to get this off of us and back to the customer, but then it comes back and they've made the revisions that they've asked for, but then have added 3 or 4 new items, and that, like I said, that creates more work for everyone. So what in this budget, I would assume that's a staffing challenge, so what in this budget helps you address that?
So over the past year, we've had some staffing challenges in site development, and we've worked really closely with Department HR to backfill critical vacancies within that group. So that's also contributed to some of the delays in us being able to provide a timely plan review. So with that, you have new members. They've got to come up to speed on the processes and get into a good groove of completing assignments in a timely manner. So we'll be working to make sure that the site development plan review team is fully staffed at adequate capacity so we can expedite reviews in a timely manner. In addition to that, I'll be working with the Department of Planning and Bureau of Buildings to see how we can collectively work to enhance the plan review process and just the overall process of reviews. So I've spoken with Interim Commissioner Sitterfall about working together to figure out best ways to enhance the process.
Thank you for that. And then the other issue is what are perceived as delays on getting meters. I know meter acquisition has a fairly long SLA to begin with, but delays of months. So is there a way that this budget helps also address that, or some another perhaps solution that comes to mind is getting these customers that knowledge up front when they get their permit and say, hey, you need to go ahead and apply for your water meter, because we have people going and getting their COs and they have to wait 3, 4 more months before they get a water meter installed.
Yeah, absolutely. And City Utilities Committee, we talked about this during my last quarterly update. Since that time, I've taken it back to the team, and we're making some adjustments to how we operate with meter installations. And so what that means is, obviously, we'll be looking to continue to use contracted services to support us. We've adjusted the SLAs appropriately, and so for applicants that have between 1 to 5 meters that need to be installed, we'll be looking to have that on a different SLA compared to those applicants that need 25-plus meters. We're also going to be implementing self-installation, so giving developers that option to self-install meters themselves, and obviously we would inspect their work to ensure that it's compliant with our standards. So we have looked to make some enhancements and adjustments on how we serve our customers with regard to large and small meter installation.
Okay, thank you for that. And then kind of a two-part question. A is, what is the current amount of past due water bills? And two, following up on a request that myself and CUC Chair Shook made, if we can get a list of the top 50 accounts for single-family, multifamily, and commercial/industrial, who is the most outstanding, and how is Watershed pursuing those funds?
And thank you for that. We recently submitted that information. I think it's going through approval, so we should have it to you before the close of this week. It'll give a good detailed summary of the current outstanding balances across all three account types, and also included on the request for the top 50 residential accounts across all council districts.
So do you roughly know what the first ask is, the total amount?
Total amount, is it?
I do.
Past due?
I do. It's, in fact, we receive an update on it every day. We're at $124,300,000, of which about $49 million is comprised of 8% of the accounts. So we've been able to isolate. We're working our way down from the largest amount and the oldest. And all this is in preparation for a planned amnesty period that we're seeking to do this summer, at which time we will offer folks the opportunity to come and get on some more flexible payment plans, utilize other sources of funding, whether it be LIWOP or other federal funds to help offset some of these things. And so we've got a plan in place and we're working it down. Between now and the onset of the amnesty period, we are continuing to dig down and try to understand why some of these accounts are in the state they are and if their adjustments can be made. In some cases, there have been repairs that we need to reflect and adjust. So I would anticipate coming forward with some write-offs as well as some adjustments. We're fully reserved for these things in compliance with our rules. So that's our path forward.
Understood. Two more quick questions. One, is this a budget that you feel is complete enough to get to the point of getting the City of Atlanta out from under the federal consent decree? I believe the deadline now is 2027.
Yes, absolutely. We're continuing to strategically make investments in our infrastructure, and we have a master schedule for how we're attacking that, our approach for staying compliant. Understanding that the market is very volatile, we're dealing with supply chain issues, labor issues, and so we're monitoring those items very closely as it relates to our ability to deliver the projects that are necessary for compliance.
Yeah, and of course the impetus for that consent decree is mostly on the sewer stormwater side, and the glaring thing before us is on the supply side. We have a number of water main breaks and old supply lines. So, and we've had this discussion in the city utilities before. But does this budget give more money to addressing the supply side issues when it comes to water line replacement?
It does. We're actually readying a package for procurement that will continue efforts to address those most critical water mains that are prone to breaks, and to continue the renewal and replacement of critical water mains across the city, aligned with what we're doing for sewers as well.
All right. Thanks so much, Commissioner, and your team.
Thank you.
I have a question. In my own neighborhood, we have to replace a culvert that does not, that needs to be enlarged at the intersection of Valley Road and Habersham Road. And I know that we're kind of, sort of, we're Nancy Creek, so we're not truly part of the combined system, although it's interesting where combined down near Bobby Jones shows up and then it goes back to sanitary only. So my question is, how can we get a culvert put in when we do the roundabout, which is desperately needed because there are over 15,000 cars on that street every day, and we had a person critically, horribly injured trying to cross that street. And of course the cars don't stop. We don't have hawk lights. We have nothing that's helpful. So the only thing that is appropriate given the volume of traffic is a roundabout. And with the roundabout, we've got to do the infrastructure underneath it. How can you help me get that accomplished?
Thank you for that question, Councilwoman Norwood. That project is actually very much on our radar. We will be onboarding an engineering team to initiate design for the culvert next month. So
Great.
We're going to be working with ATL DOT. They'll be coordinating on the roundabout installation, and we'll be handling the design for the culvert improvements.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, ma'am.
Questions, comments? President Shipman and then Ms. Overstreet.
Thank you all for being here, for the work you do. I just have a handful of questions. On page 10, the decrease in overtime, that is a wonderful chart. I'd love to just give you a chance to talk just a moment about how you've been able to accomplish that, and how you can continue the success there of managing down that overtime.
And thank you for that question, Council President Shipman. This is one of my favorite pages and charts as well. I've been in this role as of May 1st for 2 years, and coming into the role, as you can see, where we were upwards of 10 million. And so how we've been able to really affect and trend downward is filling of critical vacancies. We've really been working very close with the Department of HR during hiring blitzes, really trying to get skilled workers, certified workers, get candidates into those vacant positions. I remember we were carrying a significant number of vacancies. And so it's hard for us to cover all 3 shifts. And so that's what resulted in the overtime expenditures. So I think us being laser focused on ensuring that we're being very methodical about the numbers and recruiting talent to fill those vacancies. And we're seeing a positive trend and the translation to
Well done.
reduce overtime.
Page 14, the most market instability. Can you just talk for a minute about what are the factors there that we should be watching, and what's the variability? You say you've conservatively budgeted. Is there, obviously we know nobody knows markets, but is there additional potential downside and upside? I mean, I'm just wondering how much volatility we've got around that number.
DC Williams, want to take that?
Thank you for the question. When the economy is growing and people are spending money, it translates directly to most revenue for us, depending on what our ability to foresee perfectly what happens in this environment. If we go into a depression or the economy spirals downward, that has a direct impact on how much we would get. And because of our uncertainty about that, I don't think we had any idea that it was going to be this high and that things would grow to the extent that they have, which is why we're a little reticent just to say, given what's happened in the last 6 months, we can prognosticate that over the next year.
No, I appreciate the conservative budgeting, but just to extend the point, inflation basically for something like this actually drives it up.
It actually does.
Correct.
Right.
But then obviously changes in interest rates, which can slow down the economy, drives this down. I mean, this is one of those interesting cases where it's actually kind of the opposite of a lot of other situations.
Exactly.
Okay.
You're correct.
Last thing I would just ask is, and it's a little bit based, and one more extension of Councilman Ruhilis' question. Climate change in Atlanta, watershed management is, to me, one of the 2 key elements. The other is going to be heat management. How, on a longer-term basis, are you taking climate risk into account as you think about capital plans, spending plans, et cetera? I'd just love to give you an opportunity to touch on that.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Council President Shipman. We are very much aware of the effects of climate change, recognizing that we've got more erratic seasonal rain events that are occurring. I've been with the city for 11 years, and I can see the change in rainfall and just the effects of climate change on our system. And so we are taking that into account as future planning. We look at, 50-plus years of rainfall. We have a good understanding of how our facilities operate. And so, the way that we planned and run models and do the engineering, planning, and analysis, we still use a lot of the basics from, a decade ago. But now we're having to design with a little bit of an added level of protection. And so where we might design for our typical 2-year design storm, we're recognizing that we may need to design for a higher level of protection and rainfall in order to ensure that we've got the protection and we're able to build in that resiliency into the projects that we're proposing.
So I would just encourage you to make that explicit as we have conversations in committees and such. I think it's important that we understand the realities, right, and that project parameters, in essence, are going to have to change, right, and and new data is going to have to be taken into account, and also for the public to realize, well, why are we doing so much around that? Well, it's because these events are becoming more frequent, and here's what it means. So I appreciate the planning, and I would just ask that going forward we kind of continually talk about that point, because I think it's going to be more and more of what we see in budgets and projects going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Thanks for your work.
Hello, Watershed.
Hey, good afternoon.
Thank you for your presentation. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank you all for the expertise and responsiveness that you bring to my constituents on a regular basis. When you show up for a major problem, I love the way your expert eyes look at the whole situation and decide when it started and how it can be corrected. And so for that reason, we must make sure that our watershed is fully funded at all times, because water problems are major. They turn into something other than what we want them to be. So, and water solutions are amazing. And you all are actually doing a good job of that too, being innovative in a lot of ways. And so that brings me to one of my questions. I want to know if we have thought about increasing innovation in our budget for watershed, because and I'm thinking that we can use it in the name of development, because right now we're working on what I'm calling the Cascade Chipotle, and this is probably a secret, I don't know, but we have some issues, and I know that with a little tweaking, because we lived there for decades, we could easily solve these issues, but it would take a watershed moment in order for it to happen. And I'm wondering if our budget allows for these types of innovation for development purposes.
So, very good question. And innovation, again, that's one of the pillars of our approach. For any project that we undertake, we look at it from a 360 perspective, and we definitely try to infuse innovation. There are problems and solutions that require a gray approach, which is pipes, and then there's some that it's more situated for you to pursue a green approach, and then there's some times where there's a hybrid. With regard to developers, we do really try to ensure that they're considering green.
Okay.
Because it is a sustainable option. And I know sometimes developers have concerns about the costs.
Right.
And we're here to provide feedback and input to them so they can arrive at a right solution so that the overall development is sustainable.
Okay.
And it's not making matters worse. But I do know that, the engineering team does try to provide good insight to the development community to ensure that they're thinking outside of the box and really thinking holistically about any plans or potential effects from development.
Okay, so that means that I just need to pull you in to ask
Absolutely.
a few more specific questions about that. And I just always want to make sure our budget is adequate so that, the answer is going to be yes, and let's get this done.
Yes, yes.
And so that I'm always going to be on that side, trying to make sure of that. So I'll make sure I circle back with you on that. But are we at a point where we could use amnesty for some residential collections? Because I'm getting a whole lot of calls. And I know we're coming out of COVID, and I know everybody said COVID is over. It is not. It's not over, y'all. I know we want it to be over, but we're adopting a new way of living, and so people are now, everything that was deferred is now before them.
Right.
So I am trying to figure out from all of the conversations that I've had if we are at an amnesty point for certain individuals. Now, the huge offenders, that's the big corporations that are not paying their water bill, that's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about, auntie and grandmother that had, who used to get help from maybe other family members with some of these bills, and they're not right now.
Right.
And they've been building up now for like 18 months or so.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just want you to know I'm supportive of that, if that's where we are right
Yes.
now.
In fact, we're trying to plan an amnesty for this summer.
Oh,
We're in
okay.
the process of putting it together, which will include things like flexible payment plans and the attachment of federal and other local fundings to people who cannot pay on fixed income, things like that. So it will allow us to get closer to the customer and actually understand what resources we have to help people in those situations.
Great. So that's pretty much it from me. I just wanted you all to know how. First of all, I know I say this every time, but we have the best water just right out of our tap. It's very good. And you all do an amazing job of making sure that it's safe and delicious. So, and you show up at community events too. So you're doing a lot. You're doing the work, and you have that expert eye, and we want to make sure that you stay whole. So thanks for coming.
Okay, thank you for that, Councilman Overstreet.
Thank you, Commissioner, and congratulations on your big award that you received 2 weeks ago. We are very proud of you receiving that award. I have a concern regarding, first let me say that your walk-in office for seniors and those that need assistance they get an A. The first floor office at Atlanta City Hall, 55 Trinity Avenue, has helped so many people. And just thank you for keeping that office open, and the folks there are really, really, led by Ms. Dorothy Henry, are really, really tremendous people. They are very patient with our seniors. Question regarding on-call employees. Right now I'm hearing that they have to use their personal vehicles when they're on call on the weekends. Please look into that. I think with inflation and wear and tear on vehicles, if they are on call, they should be able to sign a vehicle in and out. They should not be using their personal vehicles. That is some feedback that I have received. And also wanted just to make sure that we have the supplies that are needed for those in the field to protect them from the heat. It is getting very, very hot, and I'm so proud of the folks that are out here in the field, and they are dispatched regularly to issues in our community. We must take care of our workforce as far as their raises and being compensated, because people are leaving and going to other locations. We've been having several job fairs out in the community, and we want to keep our experience in-house. So let's talk to people, find out what they need, and let's try to keep our experience in-house. And I think that concludes what I need to say to you all. But again, thank you for answering the call. I want you all to at some point get some sleep, because you always answer the call no matter what time, Saturday, Sunday, and your work has not gone unnoticed. Again, thank you.
Hey, thank you for those words, Councilmember Boone. And just a couple additives. We're 24-hour, 7 days a week, so the water continues to flow. So we do try to get some sleep, but we recognize the importance of the work that we do across the city. With regard to the on-call matter, that was recently brought to my attention, particularly about the number of hours that employees are admitted to be on call, but we will certainly address the issue relating to the vehicles. Supplies, we're in the middle of COVID, so ensuring employees have the proper PPEs and supplies is a top priority for us in order for them to stay safe. So I will definitely look into that, and we'll ensure that they have what they need to do their jobs. And, as I spoke about in the presentation, retention and recruitment of talent is important for us. We care about employees. We're constantly benchmarking market conditions, other agencies. Want to make sure that we've got competitive pay so we can keep our talent. And so we're going to continue to work with DHR, ensure that we've got competitive salaries and that people are making a livable wage.
Trying to let Mr. Wan go next, but quickly, one other thing that I have admired before getting here was your commitment to solar at some of the facilities. Really appreciate that. I just wanted to give you an opportunity for an update on any plans going forward for additional solar installations.
So right now, we've got solar planned installation across 6 of our facilities. Installation is currently occurring at our Utoy Creek facility, and I think at present, since the installations have occurred, we've seen a benefit of about $180,000 savings in energy. And so, I'm all about conservation and renewable energy. Any way that we can infuse that into our projects, we are. So we're being very thoughtful about that. We want to make sure we get down the road with this current deployment of the solar panels, but we're definitely going to look to see where we can infuse more renewable energy. I'll tell you, the integrated biosolids, a zero waste initiative that I spoke about briefly in the presentation, that's going to be a huge effort for us to divert waste from landfills and maybe look to turn some of the byproducts of the biosolids into a renewable energy as well. So we're going to be looking to see how we can reduce our carbon footprint across the department.
Well, I certainly look forward to that, and I would be happy to work with you in any way possible to try to both educate folks on those, because that also takes some implementation, I know, but also anything to be supportive of those efforts, and I really appreciate them.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for your work, and thank you for coming to my community to talk about the 2 biggest issues. And I wanted to know if we had any updates on South River Forest and on Lakewood Amphitheater. I know I haven't spoken to you in a while about them, but I know it should be time to where we should have something about what's going on at Lakewood by now.
So with regard to Lakewood, we have a engineering team on board. We had a meeting, I believe, about 3 to 4 weeks ago. I don't believe a member of your team was able to attend, but really kind of walked through the results of the hydraulic analysis that they performed and potential solutions. We did have a member of Screen Gems participate on the call. And so right now, we're going to look and see if there's any temporary measures that we can employ to try to mitigate the effects of flooding that could occur within the vicinity of the location. Otherwise, we're going to continue to move forward with the design. We do have a meeting upcoming with EPD, the State Environmental Protection Division, to lay out for them what our plan of action is in the form of results so we can get their buy-in. And once we've discussed with them the potential solutions and get their buy-in, we'll proceed. And we were fortunate to get some fundings, federal funding via Corps of Engineers, $6 million to support the project. So very grateful for the Corps' support in seeing that project come to fruition.
Okay, and South, so you got the funds in this budget to cover the stuff?
We do.
Perfect.
We do.
And on South River, what about South River? I know we're having flooding issues and nothing lives in that
Yes.
Creek.
So we had a meeting with Ms. Nichols and stakeholders, I think about a month ago as well, to talk about our progress there. Had a meeting with the Corps as well to understand what their recommendations would be for solutions. And so I think we agreed upon what the solution needs to be. And so from that standpoint, the Corps is really in their ball in court, but we'll work diligently with them to get a design done and get that project activated into construction.
Do y'all have I know a lot of people do, Department of Public Works, they do a lot of cross work for the state. Mm-hmm. Are you all doing the same thing for state work? Because I'm just thinking about like some easeways that you're probably maintaining or not maintaining, or we probably shouldn't be maintaining, or just water issues that we are picking up for the state. Is there a way for us to, since we're in budget season, if we are doing that, is there a way for us to point that out and send the same bill that Public Works will be sending to the state?
So with regard to watershed, where we kind of coordinate with state realm is Department of Transportation. So there's thoroughfares that are under their purview, catch basins and assets that might be clogged. And what we do is we just put in a service request with them and make them aware of the matter for them to address. It's never been an instance where, if it's something critical, we'll go ahead and take care of it. But we just try to put in a service request to them, make them aware of the situation, track and make sure that they address it, and just try to work hand in hand with them.
And I got two more quick questions. I spoke with Mayor Vince out of Union City. I spoke with the mayor of South Fulton. I know that not Mayor of South Fulton, Farabrin, actually. Mm-hmm. And they purchased their water from us. They have for a long time. And they're actually have been spending, all three cities have been spending about $1 million a year for about 20 years to try to stop purchasing water from Atlanta. They've now gotten to the point to where they are financially stable enough to no longer do that. Do you know how that would affect us as a city if they move forward? And are we, because they don't want to. I've spoken to the mayors. They don't want to stop purchasing water from us. Have we started to mitigate that? And are we, would that be explosive to us if they stop purchasing water from us?
So that's been a discussion that's been ongoing for the past couple of years. I understand that the cities of South Fulton have elected to be self-sustaining, if you will. I think they're going to construct their own facility. We do have retail customers down there as well that we'll continue to serve. I've not had any conversations with the officials down there. And, obviously if they don't purchase water from us, that'll be a financial impact. And I think we ran the analysis of what it'll be annually. But, we recognize that they have to make business decisions that are best for them. But with that, we've gotten approach from other cities down south that are interested in bolstering, their purchase of water from us, and recognize this is a regional utility, and that's what we are. So we would be able to potentially offset the reduction.
And last thing, if I could be of assistance any kind of way in those conversations, I would like to be, because I like them being our partner cities. I like the connection that we've made with our partner cities on the south side of the city. So if there's any way I can be included in that, I definitely want to be involved in it. And thank you. We mentioned a water employee a little earlier. I want to mention Ms. Verna. Ms. Verna has been so receptive to anybody from our district. She hugs them when they come down. And what I mean by hug them, not physically, she hugs their issues. And so I want to say thank you to fostering that type of environment where everybody in the department feels like they hug issues in different ways. I just have grown accustomed to the way she hugs them. And so I say I appreciate you for letting me grab hold to Ms. Verna and grow. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that.
All right. A quick comment and then a question. Comment being, I look forward to just working with y'all. A particular area, since I sit on city utilities, particular area of interest to me are going to be the stormwater projects that are funded through the most. I think as we see increased development as well as more intense weather events, I think it's something that we can't take our eye off the ball on. So we'll continue working and discussing those through the year. My question is around our coordination with DeKalb County Water, especially their consent decree, the investments that they're making, and understanding that we are downstream from them. So what they do or don't do impacts what we need to do or how our system works or doesn't work. So talk to me just briefly about the coordination, any areas of concern or any areas where we can be helpful.
Thank you for that question. A very good question. DeKalb is a neighbor. We do take on wastewater flows from them and treat them at our RM Clayton facility. We have a good working relationship and coordination with DeKalb. We always have. We try to foster positive relationships with all of our other neighboring counties and cities. And so, it's a mutually positive relationship. They remit payment to us for flows treated at the plant. We oftentimes will, share in insight to what each other is doing from a sewer infrastructure improvements perspective, and we also treat some of their flow at our South River plant as well. So overall, we compare notes, lessons learned, recognizing that the both of us are in consent decrees. Ours is a little bit more aged and mature, but certainly it's a win-win learning relationship that we have with them.
I appreciate it. I'm glad to hear that. I mean, it's critical because, we shouldn't necessarily have to bear all of the responsibility of being, downstream from them with our infrastructure. Yep. So to the extent that there are conversations to be proactive and
they do share in on capital costs.
Very good.
They do. They do. It's a 50% cost share.
Very good. So, thank you.
Yep.
Before recognizing Mr. Winston, a quick follow-up on that. As they begin tackling their projects, are we receiving higher quality readings from the water that's entering the city, or is it too soon to tell?
Too soon to tell. With regard to consent decrees, they have an I&I reduction program a lot like us. I've not looked at the flow monitoring data to see if there's a huge reduction in their flows, but that's something that I can plan to take a look at and see.
That's expected, though, correct?
It would be expected.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Browning, I just want to second the sentiment of all my colleagues here today and just thank you for your tremendous hard work and the tremendous hard work of your team. They've done such a tremendous job. You personally have taken my call late on a Friday evening for various issues, and I thank you for that. One quick question I have for you was, I know that we have some major projects that are coming on board pretty soon, one of which I went and visited with you, the South River Clarifier. We've got some other big infrastructure projects that are also coming on board. Can you talk a little bit about the fact that maybe we'll see some cost, savings as far as efficiency is concerned, with some of these new projects coming on board, and if we'll see any of those realized gains in fiscal year 2023, or should we look to see some of those savings later?
Thank you for that. It's a very good question. With a lot of those capital projects currently in construction or underway, We won't realize the benefits and savings this fiscal year. I think we'll continue to see some of the savings associated with our deployment of the solar panels. Some of the capital improvements that are being performed at South River. Once those get fully completed, I think that's when we'll be able to gauge a lot of the energy savings and associated budget savings at that facility.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate you again.
Right, no problem. Thank you.
I've got a couple I'm going to squeeze in here. Most of my others have been asked and answered. How many fully funded vacancies are you carrying?
309 currently.
Do you happen to know what the aggregate total value is?
So it's 309, but 138 are unfunded.
Okay, 309 minus
138.
138. Okay. How's your water loss program going? Prevention program going?
So it's still a work in progress. I think we'll be looking to proactively addressing system repairs, leaks, as well as some of the aging water meter infrastructure. I think is going to help to decrease water loss. Looking towards the future, we're currently on an automated meter reading program, so we want to get more towards an AMI, where it's more automatic. And so I think as we work to transition to an AMI approach, I think that's going to further reduce. For us, I think it's a couple of things. It's, asset management approach to things, ensuring that we're renewing, replacing old infrastructure to mitigate water loss, and using industry best practices to try to reduce water loss across the city. It's going to be important for us.
Okay. The question about your credit ratings. I mean, it's always bothered me that you don't have AAA. Seems to me you should. I mean, after all, we're under federal consent order. We've met all the deadlines. We pay all the bills. Mm-hmm. We charge what we have to charge. Your regime has continued to employ Mr. Bala's famous most revenue recipe. Is it the debt that we're carrying that's in the way?
We got a credit rating increase last year.
Increase in the fall.
Yeah. Was it Fitch?
Yes,
it was Fitch. So.
And we're anticipating more to come. I don't have a clear explanation of why it's not moving quicker, but that's certain.
Could you do this? Could you copy all of us on, what was it, Fitch was the latest
Fitch?
Absolutely.
Statement? Okay, because for new members who haven't looked at those, it's, they're very educational, and we haven't probably seen one in a while.
Yeah, I believe we got an increase from Fitch within this current fiscal year, and we got an upgrade from Moody, I think, within the past 2 years. Yeah, I think we did. But we can send that to you.
Okay, last question, and this is kind of a squishy one, I guess. One thing that's always frustrated me is the annual cycle in which Station XYZ does a story on our, unpaid debt. The city reacts and gets a lot more strict about its shut-off policies. 6 months later, you can count on Station XYZ then running a story about the apartment complex that's had its water turned off. Mm-hmm. How do we get out of that cycle and occupy kind of higher middle ground?
I think one of the things we're doing is to work with constituent services, try to get a full understanding of what the footprint is that we're dealing with, who actually has the account, who's going to be affected if we turn it off, what are other options for people who are living in those locations. So particularly on multifamily, that's a lot more difficult to manage there than it is single-family and commercial. So our approach is a lot more holistic. We have to do an increased amount of work at the site to understand what's actually going to happen.
Well, I'm sure as frustrated as we are, this must drive you all nuts.
It does.
Very difficult.
Other questions, comments? Mr. Wan, did you have one? Okay. Anyone else? All right. Right right at 2 o'clock. Very efficient. Thank you to all your hard workers, many of whom I've gotten to know across the street. As we've had 12 drinking water main breaks in the last 10 years. It's like 150 years old. And Commissioner, I know you are not someone who needs Google Earth to find the bottom of a trench, which is most appreciated, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll invite the Atlanta Information Management team to go ahead and come on up for your presentation, please.
We don't, because Benita couldn't print. Oh, I thought they already gave it to me. I thought they were sent to them in advance.
Yeah, I'm looking for that. Mr. Sankey, do we have copies of your presentation by chance, paper copies? Okay. And colleagues, for this section, we are on page 171 of the budget book, if you have it with you. So staff is making copies of the presentation for us, but in the meantime, Mr. Sankey, I would invite you to go ahead and get started, introduce your team, and walk us through your budget presentation, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. I am Jason Sankey, Chief Information Officer overseeing Atlanta Information Management, or AIM. With me today is Deputy CIO Daphne Rackley, who oversees Utility Technology and Services. Yeah, there we go. And Deputy CIO Aaron Baugh, who oversees our Enterprise Project Management Office. I want to start by saying thank you to the entire AIM team for their continued hard work and commitment up to our vision, our mission, and our core values. Our organization is made up of 7 main divisions: infrastructure and technology, which includes infrastructure, enterprise architecture, end-user support, the Office of Digital Transformation and Data Analytics, information security, comprising of system security, risk management, vulnerability and patch management, enterprise project management, overseeing project management, financial administration, and business relationship management, utilities technology services, overseeing public works, transportation, geographic information systems, or GIS, and watershed, aviation services, public safety and justice, and our administrative offices responsible for legislation, policy governance, vendor management, communications, performance, and workforce management. In FY22, our average retention rate was 71%, and our average vacancy rate was 14%. At the start of FY22, we had 125 full-time active employees, 9 funded vacancies, and 11 unfunded positions. At the start of FY23, we anticipate we will have 112 active full-time employees, 10 funded vacancies, and 23 unfunded positions. I say anticipate because this is somewhat of a moving target right now. As an example, we are actively recruiting and hiring backfills currently as we move forward in FY22. This is a representation of our funding trend over the past 3 years in our proposed budget for FY23. As you see, we have an allocation from the American Rescue Plan Act of $5.2 million, which will increase our budget to approximately $37 million. Here's a breakdown of the proposed budget by category, and this is the general fund breakdown, not including the ARPA funds. $11.2 million allocated to personnel, $20.2 million for contracted services, roughly $366,000 for supplies, approximately $27,000 for interdepartmental charges, a de minimis amount allocated for other costs, and $42,000 for other financing uses. I mentioned during our quarterly update that our strategy is divided into 5 pillars known as Operation Excellence. Our FY22 highlights aligned to these strategic pillars include data center cloud migrations, 311 call center cloud migration, cyber advancements, disaster recovery advancements, Atlanta Beltline camera installations, network modernization, enhanced network monitoring, citywide security policy updates, and updates to our vulnerability management program, introducing the business relationship management model in our vendor management office, introducing demand management, implementation of a use of force dashboard, video management system integration with APD in a product known as Fusus, IKE smart kiosk rollout, digitized garbage routes, GIS advancements, cloud advancements with our vendors AWS Direct Connect and Microsoft Azure, the introduction of an employee development plan and proactive performance management, the expansion of our intern partnership with Georgia State University, and a career fair recruiting event, and also a comprehensive employee training curriculum. In the recommendations submitted by the mayor's transition team, there were several synergies that align with our FY23 operational strategy, including upgrading our digital capabilities and implementing a smarter city strategy, upgrading technology and talent, supporting city departments, improving customer-facing services, investing in technology to better use data and improve payment processing, investing in technologies for real-time intelligence sharing, and investing in staff by providing growth opportunities and developmental opportunities. This is a representation of the proposed budget alignment with our strategic deliverables. As you see, we were able to leverage approximately $1 million in the current fiscal year that went toward purchasing equipment to address end-of-life hardware. In FY23, the ARPA allocation that I mentioned will support additional core infrastructure needs. In FY24, a greater investment will be needed to refresh endpoint devices, expand our enterprise software solutions, and support our digital transformation initiatives. There are several benefits to the city that will be realized with our FY23 roadmap. In our pillar, strengthening the core, we will realize significant reduction in risk outages and hardware failures. increased hardware and software support for critical and high priority applications, increased speed of recovery of systems, increased knowledge for personnel and application and services, operational insight into performance and service delivery. For increasing alignment, we will realize an increased support model for our city departments and services, significant improvement in contract and vendor management operations, reduction in contract spend, collaboration across departments for technology needs and enterprise solutions, more efficient processes across service delivery areas. In our Innovate and Accelerate pillar, we will see increased satisfaction with technology implementations by leverage what is referred to as user-centered design and development framework. We will have a defined, actionable smart city strategy, large-scale and operational benefit of smart city implementations, increased partnerships with public, private, and nonprofit entities, visibility into key data points supporting city operations and innovations, and an overall reduction in manual processes. In workforce, we plan to improve technology skills through training, ensuring highly proficient team, talent acquisition and sourcing to ensure adequately staffed within the organization. And in our application modernization pillar, we will realize the reduction of our application portfolio, ultimately reducing our total cost of ownership and maximizing return on investment with existing applications. This concludes our presentation, and we would be happy to answer any questions at this time.
All right, questions from my colleagues. All right, Shook.
All right, thank you. Let me ask a question about the all-knowing, all-powerful cloud, a word that gets said with great reverence. We've been using the cloud now in growing capacities for how long now?
Our cloud migration began in 2020.
Your take on how it's worked out compared to before?
Well, cloud is really the direction that we need to be continuing on the path, right? And we have made strides, but I will say we're not there yet, which is why we have to continue to expand that cloud strategy. But I think, from before to now, we've seen improvements from a redundancy perspective. We've seen improvements from the overall cost when it comes to infrastructure, but we still have a way to go to realize the true end state in the cloud environment.
So does utilizing the cloud involve more or less or about the same support?
It would be slightly less because you wouldn't have to have some of the resources that are needed in order to maintain the physical hardware. That would go to the third-party provider. In this case, we use AWS and we use Microsoft. But it wouldn't be a great reduction in headcount through the end of the migration.
And sorry if I missed it. What's your FTE count? I know it was in here.
The current FTE, or I should say the anticipated FTE at the start of FY22 or FY23 is 112
Okay.
active.
That's right.
With 10 funded vacancies.
Okay. And then do you happen to know, within a ballpark, how many FTEs from the outside it takes to provide the needed support?
It's a blended rate, so it's not a one-for-one. So when we contract out with the vendors, they give us that blended rate. We don't know the actual headcount that's behind the services that they provide.
Related security question. We're coming off of several years of employees working at home. Did we see any elevated security risks from doing business that way?
We have not. We had already migrated to Office 365, which made the transition fairly seamless. And from a security perspective, we have the standards that are on our endpoint devices as well as our VPN access to our network. So we've maintained a secure environment in our work from home.
Okay, thank you.
President Shipman. Thank you. I just want to walk through so that I have in my own mind a little bit of how to think about this. We go back to the FY23 proposed budget page. Next one. There you go. Personnel 11.2, contracted 20.1. The 5.2 is outside of that. And the 5.2 of the ARPA funds, how do those break down between internal and contracted services?
So the gist of that 5.2 will be mainly for infrastructure costs. So we have a number of equipment that is either end of life or coming to end of life, as well as to our continued migration to the cloud. So it's more of the physical hardware and software that's needed.
Got it. So those are sort of longer-term investments and capital investments is how I'd sort of categorize them as a budget category. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. If you look at this breakdown between personnel and purchase contracted, is this the breakdown that you think is the proper way to approach this? I mean, obviously, any technology budget is going to have outside expertise, but the ratio here is 11. Most budgets we see have much higher personnel costs relative to the total, right? Is this the right makeup, or do you think that going forward the relationship between personnel and purchase should change?
So just a clarification, when we're talking about purchased and contracted services, we're talking about like our network services, so our AT&T, or so
service providers,
the cost of doing the business. So actually, I would see that cost increasing just based on the what we've seen as far as the trend with inflation. We're seeing a 10% increase year over year. So I see that contracted services continuing to grow, but also I think there is a balance with personnel, right? So personnel grows with technology.
Gotcha. If you go a couple of more slides, I just want to make sure I understand what the operational excellence budget alignment slide is saying. The numbers I'm assuming that are there, are those in fiscal year numbers? So is the $1 million tied to FY22 and $4 million tied to FY23 and 8.9 tied to FY24?
Precisely.
Okay. So just from a broader perspective, FY24 sees some additional investments that are going to need to be made, right? That are pretty significant. Because if I look down FY24, I'm looking at 9, 10, 11.5 million-ish there, according to the plan.
That is correct.
Okay. And do we have a source yet on those? Is there some source that you know for those that are coming?
We have not identified a source at this point.
Okay. So we've got ARPA, which is allowing us to do some infrastructure investment, and I'm assuming that's taking a good portion of that FY23 line. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So for this body, we need to understand that this plan is going to necessitate a pretty big capital investment in FY24 coming up, right? So I also want to tie that to some comments that you made in the April committee meetings around how much we've been funding on a run rate or how much short we've been funding on a run rate when it comes to IT. And you talked about that historically we had been underfunding maybe to a tune of $10 million, and that had made us make compromises. So the tough question is this the budget that you need in order not to be making compromises, or is this still requiring us to make compromises?
So this is the budget that we need for FY23, but we just have to be mindful that this is a year-in-time snapshot, but we have to be forthcoming with the approach of what we need to do in FY24 and beyond. The overall cost of technology for the organization. But for FY23, this does align to our needs.
So let me ask you a different hypothetical. If you had $5 million more in budget to spend, how would you spend it? Or could you deploy it well in FY23? And I'm asking specifically because the plan shows in FY24 you're going to need it. If you had it now, would it allow you to get ahead of what you're going to need in FY24? Would you accelerate some things? Or is this really dependent on a step-by-step process?
With the number of initiatives that we have going on in FY23, we really wouldn't have more bandwidth to deliver more. So if we were to get a hypothetical $5 million, a good portion that I mentioned of the FY24 $8.9 million would be for endpoint devices. So it would be to speed up some of our endpoint replacements that we need to do.
Okay. And then my last question is, just as we see, and it's a little bit based on Councilmember Shook's question, but as we see and contemplate hybrid work environments, those types of things, and people wanting to be able to, have options, not only workers but also the public. Do you anticipate that the plan is correctly understanding how you think work is going to be going forward on a permanent basis between teleworking and working remotely and working from here?
I think it plans for the flexibility. We haven't landed on what that looks like, but we have proven that we're able to support in any model, whether it's 100% in the office, 100% telework, or a hybrid model.
So you're basically building an infrastructure that allows for kind of anything in that spectrum?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So I have very specific questions. Thank you for coming today. My questions are around the hiring, the turnover rate I've been hearing a lot about in AIM. And my question first is what's the biggest issue why you all can't keep employees? Is it?
So the turnover rate is high, and the reason being is this is a very competitive environment, and we haven't been able to keep up with the demand from a technology perspective. And there's a lot of recruiting that is going on in both the public and private sector, and that is impacting our ability to I would say retain talent. We're able to attract new talent, but the retention of talent is challenging when there are very competitive entities out there that are attracting our employees with packages that include bonuses, signing bonuses in some instances. So it's related to the competitive market.
Okay. Is there any future outlook on outsourcing any of these services that you have?
We have looked into outsourcing. The one thing that has prevented us from outsourcing more is there is a level of institutional knowledge that you want to keep when you're talking about technology, because once you decide to outsource, you're locked in, right? Because that is now your institutional knowledge. So I think that there are certain areas that make more sense, but long term, I prefer to have talent internally and outsource where we can. And right now we do that through time and material resources to augment. So when we have turnover, we will potentially contract with a time and material resource to fill that temporary gap.
It seems like most of these issues aren't yours. It seems like investment in AIM issues like city, we can invest in you a little bit more. What I'm also hearing is, why are you changing your name?
So we've had some internal discussions about what we do as an organization. And if you think about Atlanta Information Management, we don't necessarily manage information. We're looking at innovation, transformation, and really aligning to a business and technology-driven organization. So we're looking at really rebranding in a reset moment. We haven't landed on anything right now. It's just in a discovery phase.
Okay, so y'all just thinking about it right now.
That's correct.
And lastly, are all top-level employees employed by the city actually working in the city and showing a presence in the building? That's a two-part question, I guess. And you already talked about the telework in which we're about to go into. You already answered that question. Councilmember Shook kind of asked it. Lastly, how's the on-call process, and are employees getting compensated fairly across the board with the on-call process?
The on-call process, I will need to look into that. I don't specifically have that information, but I can look into it and get that back to you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr.
You got it. I thought she was going to answer it now.
Lit up. Hello.
Yep.
Can you hear me okay? So I don't have a specific answer to that, but I can tell you, as CIO Sankey is mentioning, that we are working on standardizing a process. Part of the disconnect has been, as you know, AIM is a central department that comprises IT support from aviation, general fund, and watershed. And so in some instances, there are inconsistencies there. So we're working together now to work out a standard on-call process that's managed across the board comprehensively.
Sounds like another up-top problem again. Sounds like something we can fix. This is me being new right here. How do I set up a work session for on-call processes? Because the one thing we've seen across the board with all departments is a on-call issue. So can someone help me set up a work session so we can fix this on-call process? Thank you.
Councilmember Boone.
Thank you all so much for all of your great work. Question, are all of our computers in our recreation centers working properly? And do they need upgrades? And if you don't know that right now, if you would let me know, because that's very important that the seniors and our after-school programs have adequate technology, just the computers and Wi-Fi, all of that. Please make sure all of that is working in our recreation centers. Thank you.
Understood, and we will get that information. I will say I haven't heard anything to the contrary that it's not working, but we will do an analysis and find out what's going on.
Other questions from my colleagues? All right, it's my turn. So in kind of the way you've discussed your objectives and the work, and then kind of also drifting into the conversation about funding and appropriate levels of funding, I'm just getting a sense that the plan and your position right now, given capacity, given resources, just given just the general state of everything, feels a lot more defensive than it feels offensive. So let me explain what I mean by that. You've talked about replacing equipment. You've talked about just kind of end-of-life things, and I think that's appropriate, like disaster recovery. That's all very critical. Help me reconcile maybe the impression I have versus the reality, because I feel like equally important to that, with that, is our being offensive in terms of using technology to enhance what we're doing. There's a lot of conversation right now around procurement and potentially improvements that can be made with technology in the application process. There's another group that I'm working with that's talking about how do we use technology to improve the alcohol license application process. Where is the bandwidth and capacity to be able to tackle that as well? Is it in here, or is it we're having to put out the fires first before we can even dream about, what could be?
That is a great question. So as I mentioned, we have the 5 pillars, and there is a lot of investment going into strengthening the core, because from an infrastructure perspective, we can't deliver technology without the appropriate infrastructure in place. So that is at the core. But when I talk about innovate and accelerate and increase alignment, that is still moving forward. So we have activities through that Operation Excellence that is dedicated to the customer experience, as an example, that's dedicated to how do we use data to make data-driven decisions and actually capture the outcomes with the use of data. So we have that offensive strategy, but it seems like we're on the field more on the defensive side than getting our quarterback out there and throwing down the field. But it is a balanced strategy, so we're not moving forward with just strengthening the core in FY23 or even now. We have a prioritization, and depending on where we are within that demand is where we focus our resources on.
So if you had to say a percentage split of defense versus offense, kind of like the play clock, like how many playing minutes are which team's on the field, what would you say the divide is right now for FY22, and what do you anticipate a significant change in FY23?
At the start of FY22, I would say we were 90% defense.
Wow, okay.
I would say now we're more 70 to 65% defense. And with our strategy as we move forward through FY23, it will be more 50-50. And then I'm hopeful by the end of FY23, and I like to say the more exciting stuff is innovation and transformation. That will be the 70%, and then the 30% will be the maintenance and operations of technology.
You're saying that would happen, that inflection would hopefully happen in FY24, or?
Correct.
Okay. And is that a resource function? Is it, kind of going back to President Shook's question, is the solution more resources, or is it on our side, not our users not breaking things and causing the problems?
I would say it's resource, and I think it's me, right? So this office, my role has been through, I think, 8 CIOs within the past 10 years. And when you think about that, when a new CIO comes in, it takes them about 6 months to understand what the landscape's, then developing their strategy. And then if they leave 6 months later, another one comes in. So I think we've been caught in that cycle for so long, we haven't been able to execute and really move the dial to let's get to that 70% on the offensive side of things. I think we have a passionate team. They're dedicated. They work hard. But when you constantly have change at the leadership perspective, at the commissioner perspective, that does impact our ability to be on the field more on the offensive side of things.
Okay. I mean, I think that's a fair observation. I just, I know this administration, it sounds like, and even the council members are big dreamers. I mean, I think that there's a lot of change and innovation and new ways of doing things that folks are wanting to bring to the table. I just would hate for us not to be positioned to execute on that, or at least start thinking about implementation. So, yeah, I appreciate your honest answer on that, because it aligns with what I'm sensing in terms of both the numbers and all that. Okay. The other things that are coming to mind, too, are a situation where 311, the app, we've talked about it being down and not really being able to use it in the functionalities that should be there. And I don't know if that falls within y'all internally, or is it, a vendor issue? What can you tell me about that?
So we have partnered with Commissioner Good and customer service, and we are very close to a solution. I just think back when we landed on the CRM system that we currently have, it just wasn't the right fit for the city. Mm-hmm. And so now we're moving towards, So now we're moving towards a technology that is more customer-based. When I was speaking about the user-centered design and development, when you build an app thinking that you know what the end user wants is different than actually being in a position where you reach out and have conversations to truly know what's going to be beneficial for a user. I think about my mobile banking app, and it's a great app, and it has everything that I need at my fingertips, and you can tell that they did a great job thinking about the end user experience. Mm-hmm. That's where we want to get to with examples like 311. So we know what the need is based on the end user, not based on what I think the end user needs.
I mean, yeah, I think that's a great example of had we spent more time on the offensive side, we would be spending less time on the defensive side that we find ourselves in right now. And I think to the extent that we can encourage and help and support you get past that inflection point to where we are closer to 50-50. I think that's the kind of conversations we need to be having. And again, I'm relying on you to and your team to give us that feedback in terms of what the needs are. And if it is resources, is it bigger staff? Is it bringing in the right advisors and contracts? Then let's have that conversation because. I just don't want to be kind of on our back foot for much long. I want to reduce the time that we're on our back foot. Did I see someone with the hand over here? No. Other questions? All right, before we close out, one thing, and my colleagues are going to laugh about me, I'm going to need to come meet with you about I don't know what your relationship or the city's relationship has been with some of the social media platforms, but I'm kind of getting dogged by some problematic users of my images, let's put it that way. That's been happening for about 7 years, but I may come talk to you and enlist your team's help on that. All right, any other questions from my colleagues? I thank you for what you do. I think, technology is so critical to what we do, and I know that I think you framed it very well. The change and the lack of stability in this department because of leadership change over time has certainly impacted y'all. But I feel like it's a scrappy team. Y'all have been able to kind of cut to fit, paint to match as we've needed to go. And I do want to make sure that we've opened up the conversation about how we can get y'all to where I think we're all picturing what your department and your team should be. So, let's keep that conversation. We'll keep up the good work, and we'll see how quickly we can get there. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, colleagues, that brings us to the close of today's budget hearing briefings. Tomorrow we will begin at 10 a.m. with Municipal Court, 11 a.m. with Office of Solicitor, 11:30 Public Defender. I will not be here in the morning, so the very capable Vice Chair, Howard Shook, will be leading you, and to Councilmember Hillis's delight, we'll be keeping y'all on time and on schedule, and I will try and join y'all as soon as I can. But otherwise, we stand adjourned for today. Thank you.